Ed Sullivan revealed the 20 music legends who were actually corrupt. What if I told you that America's most trusted TV stage was hiding some very dirty secrets? Under bright lights and polite applause, Ed Sullivan introduced music legends who looked clean, classy, and harmless. Families watched, parents smiled. But backstage, some of those same stars were lying, cheating, exploiting power, and wrecking lives. These were calculated moves, quiet cover-ups, and behavior that would have ended careers if the truth ever came out. Ed Sullivan shook their hands, praised their talent, and sent them into living rooms across the country. Tonight, that illusion cracks. These are 20 music legends who fooled the world and were far more corrupt than anyone ever imagined. 20. Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong walked onto the Ed Sullivan stage as a symbol of joy, warmth, and musical brilliance. To millions, he looked harmless, even comforting. But behind that trumpet and grin was a man constantly watched by authorities. Armstrong was open about his marijuana use at a time when it could destroy careers. The FBI kept files on him, monitoring his movements and statements. While he avoided public political conflict, his silence during key civil rights moments drew criticism and suspicion. Sullivan admired Armstrong's talent, but understood the quiet tension surrounding him. This was a performer loved by the public, yet never fully trusted by institutions of power. Armstrong survived by staying careful, controlled, and outwardly cheerful, even as pressure followed him everywhere. His image remained clean, but the system never stopped watching him closely. Before we move on, make sure you subscribe to the channel. These stories go much deeper, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. 19. Ricky Nelson. Ricky Nelson appeared on Ed Sullivan as the perfect American teen dream. He had the looks, the voice, and a built-in television audience. Behind the scenes, the pressure was crushing. Fame came early and stayed demanding. As musical tastes changed, the industry began to discard him. Substance use crept in as a coping tool, not rebellion. Managers and labels controlled his image and sound, limiting growth. When he tried to evolve artistically, radio stations quietly pushed him aside. Sullivan saw a young star being chewed up by the same machine that once celebrated him. Nelson's decline was not loud or scandal-filled, but it was steady and painful. His career faded through neglect, manipulation, and exhaustion, proving corruption can be quiet and still destructive. 18. Buddy Holly. Buddy Holly's appearances connected instantly with audiences. He represented youth, innovation, and sincerity. What viewers never saw were the contracts tightening around him. Holly signed deals that stripped away ownership and income. Publishers and managers benefited while he fought for basic control over his work. Despite being a driving creative force, he earned far less than those exploiting him. Sullivan respected Holly's professionalism and sensed the unfairness surrounding his business life. Holly tried to break free, planning independence and change. But time ran out. His death froze his image as pure and untouched, masking how deeply the industry had already failed him. Corruption here wore a suit and smiled politely while draining a young artist's future. 17. Fats Domino. Fats Domino looked like the safest man in rock and roll. Soft-spoken, humble, and joyful, he charmed Ed Sullivan's audience with ease. Yet behind that calm presence was a history of financial exploitation. Domino trusted managers and labels that quietly redirected money away from him. Royalties vanished. Contracts favored everyone except the artist. He performed hit after hit while others grew rich. Sullivan admired Domino's decency, but understood how the business preyed on artists who did not fight back. Domino avoided public scandals, but corruption still reached him through paperwork and silence. His story shows how wrongdoing does not always involve violence or drugs. Sometimes it hides in fine print and friendly handshakes. 16. Carl Perkins. Carl Perkins helped shape early rock music and earned respect from Ed Sullivan's audience. His talent was undeniable. His self-destruction was just as real. Alcohol abuse followed Perkins throughout his career, leading to violent incidents and missed opportunities. While peers rose higher, Perkins struggled to stay steady. Accidents, arrests, and instability kept derailing his momentum. Sullivan saw flashes of greatness mixed with warning signs. The industry offered little support, only expectations. Perkins slowly became a cautionary figure rather than a leading star. Corruption here was internal, fueled by addiction and neglect. But the system allowed it to continue without intervention. 15. The Rolling Stones. When the Rolling Stones appeared, Ed Sullivan knew he was taking a risk. Mick Jagger and the band carried controversy wherever they went. Drug arrests, obscenity trials, and cultural panic followed them. Sullivan demanded lyric changes to protect his audience. Compliance was tense, trust fragile. The Stones symbolized rebellion that scared conservative America. Legal trouble only amplified fears. Sullivan balanced ratings against responsibility, aware that chaos trailed the band. Their corruption was not hidden. It was loud, public, and provocative. The Stones survived by leaning into danger, but Sullivan never fully embraced them. He saw talent wrapped in constant risk. 14. Jackie Wilson. Jackie Wilson delivered explosive performances that left Sullivan's audience stunned. His voice and movement were unmatched. Offstage, his finances collapsed. Managers with criminal ties controlled his earnings, leaving him nearly broke despite massive success. Wilson trusted the wrong people and paid dearly. Sullivan admired Wilson's artistry, but recognized the tragedy. Unfolding quietly behind the curtain, hospitals replaced stages, bills replaced applause. Corruption drained Wilson's life force without public scandal. His fall was slow, silent, and devastating, showing how fame offers no protection from exploitation. 13. Bo Diddley. Bo Diddley changed music forever, yet the rewards rarely reached him. When he appeared in the era of Ed Sullivan, his sound was fresh, bold, and impossible to ignore. That signature beat became the backbone of countless future hits. Behind the applause, Bo Diddley was locked into contracts that favored record companies over creators. He had little control over publishing, ownership, or long-term earnings. As others copied his style and built massive careers, he struggled financially. Sullivan respected Diddley's originality and understood how the business worked against artists who lacked legal protection. There were no wild scandals or public meltdowns, only a slow realization that the system was rigged. Lawsuits replaced celebrations. Recognition came decades later, long after the money was gone. Bo Diddley's story is not about personal collapse, but about institutional corruption, where innovation was welcomed but fair compensation was not. The industry took his rhythm, sold it to the world, and quietly left him behind. 12. Ray Charles. Ray Charles stepped onto the Ed Sullivan stage as a musical force unlike anyone else. His voice carried pain, joy, and honesty. Offstage, heroin controlled his life. Addiction followed him through recording studios, hotel rooms, and performances. Arrests made headlines, shattering the polished image audiences were sold. Despite clear warning signs, the industry continued to profit while ignoring the damage. Sullivan admired Charles's brilliance, but could not overlook the visible decline. Eventually, the law intervened, forcing a confrontation with reality. Charles entered rehabilitation and rebuilt his career, but his downfall had already been witnessed by the public. His struggle exposed how addiction was tolerated as long as the artist remained profitable. Only when the situation became impossible to hide did accountability arrive. Ray Charles survived, but his story revealed a system willing to gamble with human lives in exchange for continued success. 11. Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash brought raw intensity to Ed Sullivan's stage. His music felt honest, dangerous, and deeply American. Behind that presence was a man spiraling into addiction. Amphetamines and pills ruled his daily life. Arrests followed him across borders. Concerts were canceled. Relationships collapsed. Still, the industry kept pushing him forward because audiences kept watching. Sullivan saw a performer walking a thin line between greatness and ruin. Cash's behavior became unpredictable, his health unstable. Only when his career nearly disappeared did real help appear. His later redemption became legendary, but it came after years of neglect. Cash's corruption was not about crime rings or hidden deals, but about an environment that enabled self-destruction for profit. He survived by sheer will, but many others did not. His story exposed how far a star could fall before the machine finally stopped turning. Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr. dazzled audiences with talent that seemed effortless. Singing, dancing, acting, he did it all. On Ed Sullivan's stage, he appeared confident and joyful. Offstage, his world was far more dangerous. Gambling debts pulled him into mob-controlled spaces. Powerful figures expected loyalty and silence. Pressure followed him constantly, even as he performed for millions. Sullivan valued Davis deeply, but understood the risks surrounding him. This was a performer navigating fame while protecting his life. Corruption here was subtle and terrifying, hidden behind bright lights and applause. Davis learned to smile, comply, and survive. The cost was constant anxiety and compromised freedom. His success came with invisible chains, reminding viewers that talent alone did not guarantee safety in show business. 9. Little Richard. Little Richard exploded onto Ed Sullivan's stage like a lightning strike. Loud, fearless, and unforgettable, he changed music in seconds. Behind that energy was chaos driven by drug addiction and inner turmoil. Cocaine and pills fueled erratic behavior, violent outbursts, and sudden disappearances. He quit music repeatedly, returned, then collapsed again. The industry treated his instability as part of the show rather than a warning sign. Sullivan saw both the brilliance and the danger. Little Richard was celebrated while unraveling. No one slowed the machine. His corruption lived in excess, indulgence, and neglect. Talent burned brighter than concern. Though he lived long enough to see his influence honored, the damage left deep scars. His story showed how show business often confuses destruction with entertainment. 8. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show as the definition of class and control. His voice, confidence, and presence made him untouchable in the public eye. Behind that polished image were long-standing reports of underworld connections. Sinatra's friendships with known mafia figures drew the attention of federal investigators, and the FBI maintained files on his activities for years. These connections helped him navigate Hollywood power structures, secure deals, and protect his career during difficult periods. Sullivan respected Sinatra's talent, but understood the unspoken influence surrounding him. Sinatra rarely faced consequences, not because rumors were weak, but because his power was strong. The corruption here was subtle, operating through favors, intimidation, and silence. Sinatra never appeared reckless on camera. Everything was controlled. That control allowed him to survive scandals that would have destroyed others. His story shows how fame, influence, and fear can shield a performer from accountability while maintaining a flawless public image. 7. Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison's appearance with the Doors on the Ed Sullivan Show became legendary for all the wrong reasons. He agreed to censor lyrics, then deliberately ignored the agreement live on air. Sullivan responded with an immediate lifetime ban. Morrison embraced chaos, viewing rules as targets rather than limits. Offstage, alcohol and drugs rapidly consumed him. Arrests, erratic performances, and public disorder followed. His behavior became increasingly unstable, and the industry struggled to contain him. Sullivan saw Morrison not as misunderstood, but as self-destructive. Unlike others who hid corruption, Morrison displayed it openly. He rejected restraint and authority, even when it cost him major platforms. His early death cemented his image as a doomed rebel. Morrison's corruption lived in excess, defiance, and disregard for consequences. Talent burned bright, but discipline was absent. The collapse was fast and irreversible. 6. Ike Turner. Ike Turner stood on the Ed Sullivan stage as part of one of music's most explosive acts. Behind the scenes, he ruled through intimidation. Cocaine addiction fueled violent behavior that spilled into both professional and personal spaces. Multiple accounts described physical and emotional abuse, especially toward Tina Turner. Sullivan admired Tina's talent, but distrusted Ike's presence. His influence over careers came with fear and manipulation. While Ike contributed musically, his cruelty overshadowed everything else. Arrests and drug charges followed him for years. The industry tolerated his behavior as long as the performances delivered results. Eventually, the truth surfaced publicly, ending any illusion of respectability. Ike Turner's story is one of unchecked power, where talent became a weapon rather than a gift. His downfall was not sudden. It was earned through years of documented harm. 5. Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley's appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show marked a turning point in popular culture. Millions watched, captivated by his voice and movement. Beneath the hysteria were concerns rarely discussed at the time. Elvis began a relationship with Priscilla when she was 14, creating a clear imbalance of age, fame, and power. As his career grew, control became central to his personal life. Prescription drugs later replaced freedom, leading to dependence and isolation. Sullivan praised Elvis publicly, but carried private doubts about the world surrounding him. Elvis was protected by management, insulated from consequences, and slowly consumed by the system that elevated him. His corruption was not criminal in the traditional sense. It lived in exploitation, control, and excess disguised as stardom. The image remained sacred, even as the man behind it weakened. 4. James Brown. James Brown electrified the Ed Sullivan stage like few others. His influence on soul and funk was undeniable, and his performances felt unstoppable. Behind that brilliance lived a darker reality. Brown's private life was marked by control, intimidation, and violence. Multiple partners later described abuse, while his criminal record grew over the years. Drug use intensified his paranoia and aggression. Arrests, high-speed chases, and erratic behavior became impossible to ignore. Sullivan admired Brown's musical power but kept a careful distance, aware that chaos followed him closely. The industry continued to celebrate his innovation while quietly absorbing the damage he caused. Brown demanded obedience from those around him, treating band members harshly and enforcing discipline through fear. His story reveals how extraordinary talent can coexist with deeply destructive behavior. Fame amplified his authority, and accountability arrived slowly. The music remained legendary, but the cost was severe for those closest to him. 3. Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry helped define rock and roll's sound and attitude. When he appeared in the Ed Sullivan era, he was seen as a pioneer shaping a new musical future. Offstage, his legal troubles told a different story. Berry served time for armed robbery early in life, followed later by a Mann Act conviction involving a minor. That case resulted in a prison sentence during the height of his fame. Lawsuits and accusations continued for decades, damaging his reputation. Sullivan never separated Barry's genius from his actions. While audiences celebrated the music, the host understood that talent did not erase responsibility. Barry's career survived, but trust never fully returned. His legacy remains complicated, balancing innovation against repeated misconduct. Barry's corruption was direct, documented, and deeply intertwined with his rise to fame. 2. Phil Spector. Phil Spector never appeared as a performer on The Ed Sullivan Show, but his influence loomed large. The creator of the Wall of Sound reshaped popular music from behind the scenes. His private behavior, however, was terrifying. Spector controlled artists through intimidation, threats, and emotional abuse. Ronnie Spector later described years of confinement and fear. Gun incidents involving musicians and associates became known within the industry. Sullivan sensed danger long before the public did. Decades later, Spector's conviction for murder confirmed the violent tendencies many had whispered about. His genius could not hide his instability forever. Spector's story is one of unchecked power, where creativity masked cruelty. The music endured, but the man behind it left destruction in his wake. 1. Jerry Lee Lewis. Jerry Lee Lewis burst onto the scene as a reckless piano genius. His energy thrilled audiences and terrified gatekeepers. Everything collapsed when it was revealed he had married his 13-year-old cousin. Ed Sullivan immediately banned him from the show, cutting off mainstream support overnight. Lewis's career imploded almost instantly. Reports of abusive relationships followed him for years, along with disturbing circumstances surrounding the deaths of multiple wives. His behavior confirmed every fear Sullivan had held. Lewis never fully escaped controversy, spending decades fighting his own reputation. Talent kept him alive professionally, but trust was gone. His story stands as the clearest example of why Sullivan believed character mattered. The downfall was not accidental. It was the result of repeated choices that no amount of fame could erase. And that's just the beginning. These weren't random rumors or harmless drama. These were real actions, real damage, and real people left behind once the cameras shut off. So here's the big question. How many of your favorite music legends were never who you thought they were? If you want the truth that history tried to bury, don't go anywhere. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with this channel.